And so, he's very in touch with, understands what the athletes are dealing with, and really does get sport. Bob also is, when we're dealing, when we're submitting to Sport Canada our views on or recommendations, suggestions, feedback on AAP and karting, that's going directly to Bob, and it's usually a process of him and I having several conversations back and forth. Bob has been exceptional and forthright in bringing forward information. How many athletes, how many cards, how long. I mean, sharing all that information, and so it really has been always a very positive collaboration working with Bob on the policies and such. I won't delay. We've got an hour for this session. Bob is going to go through his presentation start to finish, and then, so if you have questions during the presentation, please hold on to those questions, or as Bob said, we won't get to the really good stuff at the end of the presentation, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So Bob,
okay,
why don't you take it away? Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. This is, I don't know how many forums I've been to, but it's always nice to get out of the office and meet with you guys, sit down, talk to you about issues. Sometimes they're AP issues, sometimes they're just Sport Canada issues. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do kind of a Sport Canada 101, an overview of Sport Canada, our funding programs, budgets, structure, things like that. I'll try to get through that pretty quickly. Then I'm going to do an AAP 101, just a little information about the Athlete Assistance Program, some historical look at our funding and how we've progressed through the years. And then I'm going to go into some details about the changes that we've made to the program that were announced last October, a little bit about the process, the input that we got throughout from the sports system, and then I'll take Q&As. Hopefully I can keep my presentation down to half an hour, then we'll have half an hour for Q&As. So Sport Canada is part of the Department of Canadian Heritage. And within the department, we're in a sector called sport, major events, and regions. And we're led by a director general who oversees basically 4 divisions within Sport Canada. There's the hosting division, which looks after all the hosting events, the big events like hosting the Pan Am Games, as well as small events such as single sport World Championships, single sport World Cup events, things like that. So that's one of the divisions. We have a sport development division that deals mostly with funding of national sport organizations, multi-sport organizations, and that division is basically where most of the NSOs get most of their money from Sport Canada. The Athlete Assistance Program is in the Sport Excellence Division, which deals with all the high performance aspects of Sport Canada's business. We deal with Own the Podium. We deal with all the Canadian sports centers. The Athlete Assistance Program is in there, and we also have a games mission unit that deals with Sport Canada's involvement in major games like Olympic and Paralympic Games. And then the last division is our Policy and Planning Division, which is the bureaucratic arm of Sport Canada that deals internally with government operations. We do Treasury Board submissions, Cabinet submissions, anything like that comes from through that division. Our budget this year, our total budget is approximately $210 million. It's divided into 3 programs. The Athlete Assistance Program is, right now our budget is $28 million, which is up $1 million from last year, 13% of our total budget. The Sports Support Program, which is the biggest program that we have, funds all the NSOs. All the money that gets recommended by OTP comes through that program. All the money that goes to major multi-sport organizations like the Canadian Paralympic Committee, the COC, and all the sports centers, Canadian sports centers, comes through that program. So that's 47 million. And then there's 25 million in the hosting programs to host mostly single sport international competitions within Canada. That 25 million does not include, there's $122 million this year in our budget for Pan Am Games that comes through Sport Canada and then goes to the Pan Am Organizing Committee for infrastructure and stuff like that. And then our operating budget is just under 10 million, and that's our budget for this year. And the budget changes a little bit from year to year, but I mean, basically that's been a structure for a while. AAP has been about 10, 12, 13%, sports support 70%, and hosting 10 or 12%. Okay, so what does Sport Canada do? What are our goals? As the government arm of sport, we have two specific goals. One is to increase participation for Canadian athletes in quality sport activities, and the other one is for Canadians to consistently achieve podium results at Olympics, Paralympics, and World Championships. Those are our overarching goals, and all our programs are structured in order to try to meet those goals. So in the Sport Excellence Division, we have a strategy that is linked specifically to that second goal, which is a performance goal. And in the strategy itself, there's 4 pieces. There's collaborative leadership, where we deal with the COC, CPC, and own the podium in trying to align whatever we do together to strategically meet the goals that we've set. High performance facility access. That's where we work with, I guess the best example right now is the 2015 Pan Am Games. We're working specifically with the Pan Am Organizing Committee to have legacy agreements in place. So when those games are over, those facilities are going to be available to high-performance athletes on a priority basis. So the swimming pool, it's open to national team athletes, carded athletes on a priority basis. There's funds put away to keep that facility in place for high-performance use. And the same with the rest of the facilities. That's the intent. And that we have one specific employee at Sport Canada that all he does right now is work on those agreements. High-performance system development. This is the part of our structure that deals with Own the Podium and the recommendations we get from Own the Podium for targeted funding for national sport organizations, for athletes, for Canadian sports centers, in order to provide enhanced services to athletes and NSOs that are targeted by Own the Podium. The athlete assistance program is kind of built into this part of our strategy too, high performance systems development. And then the last one is knowledge development and transfer. So just the intent here is to collect data and knowledge and basically disperse it throughout the sports system, use it. The status of the athlete study is one example of that. I'll talk a little bit about the status of the athlete study at the end. So that's one of our pieces where we do some sport knowledge development and translation. Just to let you guys know that both Sport Canada and the Athlete Assistance Program provide support to athletes in non-targeted and non-Olympic sports. It's not just the targeted sports that we provide support to. It's across the sports system. The AAP provides support to athletes in 86 sport disciplines, not just the targeted sports. So it's 86 sport disciplines. And that's the same thing for the sports support program. The sports support program provides funding for more than just the targeted sports. Okay, the goals of the Athlete Assistance Program, they're pretty simple, and they're basically aimed at helping you guys perform. So the funding that we provide is there to help offset the cost that you guys have because of your involvement in high performance sport. The funding was never intended to meet all of your living and training needs. It's there to help offset the costs. If we were, to provide money for you guys to live full time with nothing but AAP, our budget would be way more than $28 million a year. So it's to help you guys offset your expenses. It's to help you guys spend more time training, and more time competing. And some of the data that we have from the Status of the Athlete study kind of backs that up. That over time, the program has helped you guys to spend more time training and competing. We want to lengthen the careers of high-performance athletes. And again, the information that we have on our database at Sport Canada shows that carded athletes are staying in the system longer. Carded athletes are generally older now than they were in the past, even though we're probably putting a lot more money into at the development level. Carded athletes are getting older. And so there's data to back up the fact that one goal is being met. Assist athletes to prepare for a career after sport. That's where our deferred tuition come in. I'll talk to that a little bit later in terms of some of the challenges that we're having with our tuition and deferred tuition in terms of the costs we're incurring and the number of athletes that are taking advantage of tuition and deferred tuition. And I guess the ultimate goal is to contribute to improved performances at the international level. And I think probably over the past two quads, I think our performances have been improving, notably in Vancouver. We had great results in Vancouver. And some of the successes that we're having now. Athletics won 5 medals at the World Championships this year, which is a big increase in how their performance has been in the past. Okay, AP spending. Sorry about the figures there, but this is just a graphic that shows you the increase in AP spending over the last probably 20 years. When I first started with Sport Canada, and this is dating me a little bit, it was before 1990, and like we had a budget of around $4 million, probably less than $4 million, and we were funding maybe 400 or 500 athletes, and now we're up to $28 million. We're funding over 1,800 athletes a year. So the program has increased in size. As I said, we've got 86 sport disciplines that we're providing support to. I think the biggest problem, I'll talk a little bit about this again, it'll come up again. We really haven't had an increase in budgetary support for the program since 2004. But that increase in 2004, the increases that we had between 1999 and 2004 our budget tripled. In 1999, the AAP budget was $9 million. In 2004, the budget was moved up to $27 million. We didn't get to because of all the changes that we had to make in terms of adding new sports into the system, new cards into the system over a period of time. We didn't get up to 24, 25, 26 million till about I'd say 2008, 2009. We've gone up a little bit since then. Last year we spent almost 27.4 million in AP support, and we really don't have a lot of margin left in our budget. There's not I think we're probably 2% from our max budget, and we cannot overspend. It's a grant program, and the way the government works on grant programs, if we hit $28 million, that's it. That's all we get. We don't get $28 million and $1. I cannot go over $28 million. So it's really tight controlling the budget. Contributions programs are a little different. They can get extra money at the end of the year, but for the athlete assistance program, it's $28 million. Okay, these are some of the issues that we were and have been, and I guess partly continue to be facing within the program. These issues are kind of identified as part of a review that we did of the athlete assistance program over the past 2 or 3 years that's linked to the government exercise to evaluate the athlete assistance program on probably every 4 to 5 years. We go through a process of evaluating the program. So there's been a number of things in the environment that have basically had an impact on how we manage the AAP, some of our goals, the focus that we have. We're focusing now on mostly Olympic and Paralympic sports, although as I said, we do fund athletes in non-Olympic sports, and we do fund athletes in non-targeted sports. The creation of OTP put a bigger focus on Olympic sports and put a bigger focus on results in Olympic and Paralympic sports. One of the challenges that we have is our budgets was at $27 million. We were fortunate enough in the last year to have an additional $1 million added to our budget. And I think Minister Gasal was here during the week for the Kids' Day exercises, and I think there was a lot of work done at the political level to maintain our budget at 27 and even move it up to 28 million. The 2012 deficit reduction exercise is what the government called it, put a lot of pressure on all the programs within Canadian Heritage. Government-wide, the government cut $4 billion. We were in a situation where we were examining budget cuts of 2%, 5%, and 10%, and giving scenarios for those types of budget cuts. They never came to fruition. We didn't lose any money. There's entire programs that disappeared in Canadian Heritage, and most of the programs got cut, either 2%, 5%, or 10%. So we were very fortunate, and to me it just shows that this government, anyways, has likes sport. They like what sport does for the Canadian public and the focus that it brings to Canada nationally and internationally. As I said earlier, the stipends have not increased since 2004. When they were increased in 2004, it was a big jump. Development cards went up 80%, from $500 to $900 a month. Senior cards went from $900 to $1,500 a month. So it was a big jump then, but we still haven't had an increase. AtheletsCAN made a submission to the government as part of this whole exercise of evaluating the program and reviewing the program, making a case for increasing the stipends. But with the budget reduction exercise, timing wasn't good. Timing was not good. Increased tuition and deferred tuition, I'll get into a little bit of detail on that later. But our costs have tripled in probably 10 years. And that's a big challenge for us. As I said, we've got 86 sport disciplines that we're funding right now. And the number of sport disciplines that are coming to us and requesting funding just keeps going up. I mean, recently we've added, Paralympic soccer and volleyball, women's ski jumping. There's been new events on the Olympic program in the winter sports, specifically snowboard and freestyle ski. So we have pressure to add more cards into those sports to cover those events. Recently we've added Paralympic canoe, Paralympic triathlon. So we're constantly being requested to put funding into more sports, which just flattens our support, right? It just thins out the support because we've only got $28 million. And, regardless of how many sports we support, that the max number of athletes that we're going to be able to support is going to be around 1,800. These last two are things that we need to take a look at in the future. Addressing the professional athlete issue. There more and more, we need to look at athletes that have high incomes and that are professional athletes and are still receiving athlete assistance program support. There have been cases in the past in some team sports where they want to nominate athletes that are in pro leagues and earning like really significant amount of money. And we probably need to put something in place in our policies to deal with that. And then the last one is kind of linked to that. It's an income test for all athletes. So if an athlete's making, regardless of whether it's an income from sport or an income from a professional occupation, if they're making $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, can we provide support that we would normally provide to them to other athletes? Where's the best place to put our money? So those, I guess, last two are kind of long-term issues, and we're going to need to do a little bit more research on them, especially the last one. Oops. Okay, when we were looking at all these issues, we did a consultation process that was fairly broad across the whole sports system. We consulted with national sport organizations. We consulted with multi-sport organizations, the Canadian Sports Centers. We consulted with athletes through the CO Athlete Council, CPC Athlete Council, Josh and his group, and through AtheletsCAN. And we also went very broadly to the full carded athlete community through the status of the athlete study. We also went to Own the Podium and talked to Own the Podium about some of these issues. And there was I guess an independent evaluation of all Sport Canada programs by a group called, I think it's Prairie Research Associates, that was involved in the evaluation of the athlete assistance program and the other two Sport Canada programs. It was an independent evaluation. Okay, consultation feedback. So when we were talking to the sport community about these issues that we just talked about, these are the things that came out through the consultation process. And I mean, some of them were, just confirming what we already knew, but they were voiced by the whole sport community. So the biggest concern that was expressed was the need to maintain the number of cards that we had in the system, that was the priority. And it was expressed by athletes, it was expressed by athlete groups, including AtheletsCAN, it was expressed by coaches, it was expressed by NSOs. So it was a pretty consistent message that we were getting from the sport community. So that's one of the things that we kept in our minds all the time, was that specific concern. Again, the concern that the stipends haven't been increased was voiced many times, and it was a widely voiced throughout the sport community. One of the things that, especially from the coaches, but also from the athletes through the stats of the athlete study, that premature retirement was a significant concern. Athletes were retiring before they got to their peak. They were retiring early, either that they were performing very well, but they couldn't stay in the system any longer, or they hadn't reached their potential yet. So that was one issue. And the other thing with regards to premature retirement was that well-performing athletes with families didn't have sufficient financial resources to support their families. And that was one of the biggest reasons that well-performing athletes were retiring. They had families, and they couldn't support their families with just the AAP support that they were getting from us and what other resources that they have. Some of them got provincial support, but it was a significant factor in well-performing athletes retiring. From the Paralympic side, we heard a very strong message that athletes with high support needs for training and competition needed more funding than athletes that didn't have the same type of disabilities. So that was a consistent message that we heard from the CPC and athletes as well. We also heard, especially from AtheletsCAN, that carding for athletes in Olympic sports that aren't eligible for AAP support is one of those 86 sports that we do fund, needed to be looked at again. We looked at it. We made some small changes. We didn't make some big changes, but we did make some small changes to it. And then last of all, coaching as a career for carded athletes, the independent research, the independent evaluation that was done by Prairie Research Group made some suggestions that we should try to strengthen what the AAP does for helping carded athletes to move into a coaching career. That's something we've looked at. There are a couple of small things that the AAP does to help that, but it probably can be improved. Oops. Okay, so here's the I guess the nuts and bolts of where all this consultation, where all of this discussion went. And I talked at AtheletsCAN last year, and I was kind of handcuffed because I knew these changes were coming, but they had not been approved by the minister yet, and they weren't announced. So I kind of went over some of this stuff last year in terms of what the issues were, what consultations. But these are the results of what the changes that we made last year. Most of them, I think, are very positive. Where we're in a little bit of trouble is in our tuition program. So these are the major changes that we did. We put in place a special, additional pieces of our special needs program to address some of the issues that we heard consistently from the sport community. And what we did, the first thing that we did, we took around 24 million that we've been using for living and training allowance, and we set that aside. We said number of carded athletes, the amount of living and training allowance we're providing to carded athletes stays the way it is, 24 million bucks. We took another 2.5 million, which is our tuition budget, and has been our tuition budget. We set that aside. They said tuition's going to stay at 2.5 million. And then we took another 1.5, and this is where the minister helped us with grabbing another $1 million. Without that $1 million, we wouldn't have been able to make these changes unless we cut number of cards. So the $1 million extra that we have now helped us put some of these things in place. So first thing we did, we put in place an excellence allowance for well-performing athletes in Olympic and Paralympic sports to help those well-performing athletes stay in the system. So that's an additional $6,000 a year. It's income tested. If your total income, as determined by Revenue Canada, is over $60,000 a year, including AAP support, you wouldn't get that $6,000. So it's targeted towards athletes that have some, I would say, financial difficulties, but whose finances weren't specifically very high. So that's one piece. The other piece we did for the same athletes who have families, we added another $6,000, jacked up the income test to $70,000. So well-performing athletes with families could get an additional $12,000. So that put those athletes up to $30,000 a year from the Athlete Assistance Program. That's all tax-free money. And the last piece that we had was allowance for Paralympic athletes with high levels of disabilities who needed additional support on the field of play and in training. We put a ceiling on these additional special needs, and actually our whole special needs program of $13,000 a year. So an athlete that meets some of these requirements could get an additional $13,000 a year from Sport Canada. Plus, they'd still be eligible for up to $5,000 a year in tuition, which is $36,000 a year. Okay, I'll talk to the tuition, the deferred tuition changes on a separate note. How am I doing, Jazz? Pretty good? Okay. We made some other changes in the system that didn't have any financial implications. We changed how we deal with athletes relocating to national training centers to make it more flexible. We changed our SR1, SR2 criteria, which put it up to top 8. Financially, it doesn't have any implication on athletes. We changed our team sport policies a little bit to try to strengthen the fact that athletes who are carded have to spend at least 30 days in national team programs. And if they want 12 months support, there has to be 60 days for all athletes, not just development athletes. We made some changes to as I said earlier, those sports that are not eligible for AP support. We made some changes to I guess make those restrictions a little lesser so that individual athletes could qualify for AP support. And we changed the NSO eligibility criteria basically to align ourselves with our sport funding and accountability framework. And then, as I said, we need to do some further study on income testing. Okay, so I've given you the good news. Okay, here's the bad news. This is something that we really struggled with. Knowing what our budget was, knowing what our priorities were. Our tuition budget, since we got that big increase in 2004, has been $2.5 million a year. And the number of athletes and the cost of tuition has just constantly been going up since 2000. So in 2000, we were supporting about 500 athletes through the tuition program, and that we were spending just over $1 million. Okay? In 2004, when we put the 2.5 million ceiling on, our spending was 1.6 million, and we were supporting just over 600 athletes. Okay? Since 2004, our tuition has, well, doubled, and the number of athletes is now over 900 through tuition and deferred tuition. And as I said earlier, because we are a grant program, we cannot go over our $28 million. Last year, 11-12, we spent 2.65 million, and 12-13, we spent over $3 million. So we're $500,000 over our tuition budget. The only reason that we're sustainable right now and not over our 28 million is because we're still not at the point we thought we were going to be with all these special needs increases. So we're probably only spending about $1 million in these new special needs programs that I was talking about. But that's not going to continue. That's not going to continue. Deferred tuition support is one of the biggest areas of increase. We've gone from 75 athletes in 2000 and $150,000 in deferred tuition to last year over $1 million in deferred tuition and over 300 athletes. So that's a big increase in our tuition spending. And we anticipated that deferred tuition would keep going, but what we anticipated at some point in time it's going to level off, and it hasn't leveled off. Okay, so these are the changes that we made to the tuition program. Before we made these changes, what we did is we sought out a research company that specialized in doing mathematical computerized modeling to give us an idea where our spending could be going. So we gave them all our AAP tuition data going back to 1995. And they put this into a program, and they showed us a model, where's tuition going, and it was just kept going up and up and up. So we said, okay, here's some scenarios that we want to run to try to keep our tuition at $2.5 million. So when they ran a whole bunch of scenarios, basically it came down to, we've got to decrease our yearly maximum, we've got to put a lifetime maximum, and this is what it came out to. So we maintained our budget at $2.5 million. We put a lifetime maximum of $25,000 per year, athlete, and the maximum tuition and deferred tuition per year went from $10,000 to $5,000. Now, in looking at that, we also took a look at what impact it was going to have on carded athletes. About 75 to 80% of carded athletes that access tuition access less than $5,000 a year. About 90 to 95% access less than $6,000 a year. So it's going to impact 25% of the athletes, and it's going to have a small impact on probably 15%. The number of years that an athlete can access deferred stays the same. It's 5 years. They can only access $5,000 per year, but they can still access it for 5 years past their last date of carding. And the other thing that we changed was deferred tuition went up to a maximum of $25,000. Previously, we were using course counts to determine deferred, and the maximum an athlete could get for deferred tuition was $23,600. So that went up a little bit, but not much. Okay, I just want to put in a little plug for some of the stuff that we're doing right now in terms of consultation, future consultation. We've been threatening for a while to put in an exit questionnaire survey for retirement carded athletes. We started it internally within within Canadian Heritage's research group. And it's been going since June last year. So every time we meet with NSOs to recard all their athletes, they give us a list of athletes that have actually officially retired. We send them an exit questionnaire. We're still going through a review of the first year's information, and we'll be releasing this information to the community pretty shortly. The other thing we're doing is we just started the status of the athlete study for the next go-around, and this study is going to feed into the next AAP evaluation, which will be 2014, 2015. ECOS Research is doing it again. The emails went out from ECOS September 5th, so all of you guys should have got an email from ECOS. I know that ECOS was really happy with the original response. Like within a week, we had 150 responses, which was really good. So if you can do two things. Number one, go back into your email accounts and see if you got anything from ECOS. And if you do, log on to the questionnaire. The questionnaire has been reduced. I think the last time we did it, it's probably 40, 45 minutes. It's down to probably 25 minutes. So it's been reduced a little bit. The other thing I could ask you to do is when you go back to your training sites and you're talking to your fellow athletes, encourage them to look for this email from ECOS and complete it. We'll be doing some follow-up after the first set of emails has gone out, and after probably a month or 2 months, we'll be doing follow-up with athletes that haven't responded. So if you could encourage your fellow athletes to look for this and to respond to it, it's your chance to have some input into the sports system, guys. Okay, so that's not
awesome.
bad.
That's pretty good, Bob.
Yeah.
So let's go with 15 minutes on questions. Will get used up very quickly. Can we start with
super quick question? I'm just curious how to spell ECOS, just to go
EKOS.
And we'll make sure that word gets out, Bob, in the athlete handbooks or follow-up.
Josh from Bocce. Bob, thank you very much for that presentation, and I especially appreciated the issues slide. I really appreciate that you've outlined that. I see a lot of what we've submitted to Sport Canada in those issues, so it makes me feel very satisfied to know that Sport Canada is considering those and thinking about them. And I'll also say I completed my ECOS questionnaire the other day, and it's a really good questionnaire. And I think we're used to a lot of questionnaires from our NSOs where they're sort of designed not to get information out of us. And the ECOS questionnaire was very satisfying. I was able to put a lot of information into it, and it was actually felt like a good therapy session after I completed it. So I'd encourage everyone else to do the same. My question, Bob, is I'm intrigued by the difference between a grant and a contribution program. What's an example of a contribution program?
Well, an example of a contribution program is the funding that your NSOs gets from Sport Canada through the sports support program. So the contribution program has a specific contract with the recipient that says, here's the amount of money that you're going to get, here's how you can spend it, okay? And the contribution agreement, the recipient has to account for all the spending, okay? And in terms of government and how they handle contribution and grants, if if at the end of the year there's extra money laying around in one contribution program, and there's another contribution program that has increased demands, they can move that money over to the other program. For a grant program, can't do it. I can't flip my money to well, I probably can, but if I'm at 28 million and I got 50 other carded athletes that I need to get a March check to, not going to happen.
So I guess the follow-up question.
Yeah, the other thing about a grant program is you guys don't have to report anything on,
Yeah.
on a grant program. There's no accounting for the grant program. You guys met a specific requirement, performance-wise, to get that grant, and it's has a specific, I guess, use, and that's to offset your costs. And we don't ask, where the money goes. We know that you got high costs.
So have you considered, since the first of all, I'd say that increasing tuition expense should be measures of success in the system. That's great news. More athletes getting an education, more athletes being able to, the Globe and Mail just did a survey on national income. Number one factor in income, education. Those, athletes come back, contribute to the tax base. From a policy perspective, it should be a priority to get athletes educated.
Yep.
Have you looked at having tuition as an operational or as a contribution? Just carve that piece out? Can it be a standalone? The tuition can be accounted for. It's going towards tuition, and we all have to submit specifically for that.
we couldn't turn tuition into a contribution unless we made it a separate program. It'd have to be totally separate.
Have you considered that?
Pardon me?
Have you considered that?
No. In terms of what it would take to do that within the government bureaucracy, it would be pretty difficult, and the application accounting procedures would probably be a little bit different too. I mean, we could do it, but to what end?
To more athletes getting an education.
Well, no, I think one of the things that we looked at was, is this going to stop athletes getting an education? Absolutely not. It's still going to give them $5,000 a year to get an education. It's still going to give them $25,000 towards completing, an undergrad degree, or, if they've already got an undergrad degree, contributing to a master's or something like that, or a college degree. And more athletes are not opting for formal university education. We're spending more money now on college, on private schools, specialty programs, stuff like that.
Questions?
Ilya from wrestling.
So my big thing was related to grants. In order to get money from financial support, you need to have some kind of results from the sounds of it, especially at the Olympic or Paralympic level.
Yeah, can you speak up? I can't hear you.
In order to get this better. In order to get financial support, from what I understand, you need to have results at the Olympic or Paralympic level, or some kind of results at the world level. But in order to get results, I find it's often necessary to have financial support. And it's kind of a vicious cycle. If you don't have the results, you don't get the support, and it continues that way. If you're in a program that doesn't have results, what's a good way to kind of sneak in and get financial support anyways? Is there a way to do that? Have other programs been successful in doing that?
Yeah, I think some of the provinces right now have started to provide more support to athletes at the below the carded athlete level. Provinces like Quebec and Ontario and BC have programs to support provincial level athletes. The other thing that, and this has been going on for a while, the other thing that the Athlete Assistance Program has been doing is digging deeper into the system. So wrestling, for example, now has development cards for young, specifically for younger developing athletes to try to get some money into those younger kids' hands so that they can get up to the senior level faster. So, I mean, those are the two ways from I guess a government level, where things have changed to get money into hands of athletes that haven't met that senior card criteria yet.
Hello, Chris from Paralympic. Just wanted
Chris.
to ask on the deferred question. Now you can defer up to 5 years. Say 4 years after your retirement, you start a 3-year course. Does that mean you can get a 3-year degree or whatever? Does that mean you can get funding for those 3 years, or does it stop after the 5th year after you've retired?
Yeah, it stops after the 5th year.
So you pretty well, to get the funding, have to start the day you retire. There is no real deferment.
Yeah.
Sort of funny to call it deferred then.
Well, I mean, we had to make some calls on how we're going to deal with this program, and I think to have a financial risk extend, for 10, 15 years, we just couldn't deal with it. It wasn't acceptable. So we figured that, and when we set that five-year max, we did consult with AtheletsCAN, and we're talking, this is back in 1995 when we put this program in place. So there was consultation on it. I know it's not it's not ideal, but like if you're a carded athlete and you retire and you want to go back to school, I mean, you've basically an undergrad degree takes 4 years. You've got a year to think about it and to make your decision on where you're going.
Bob, can I help you out? It's Lori. So just being able to speak from that position back in 1995. So one of the real issues that athletes were having was that while they were actively competing, so prior to their retirement, they were struggling with the fact that they couldn't bank the tuition time. So they had a benefit, the possibility of a benefit that they couldn't use because they were active athletes. So that's sort of how it was decided that the deferring was deferring until after your active career. So that was the issue at that point, and how it was dealt with. That was how that solution came to be back in the day.
Hi, I'm Joanna from Fencing. I have a two-part question. First, the deferral, can it be for a master's program, or does it have to be undergrad?
No, it can be for anything. It can be a master's degree. You can go to college. You can go to a private school, but it has to be within your overall total of $25,000, and it has to be a maximum of $5,000 a year.
Okay. And the $5,000, can we use it to study abroad, like in Europe or the States, or does
Nope,
it have to be?
not any longer.
Sorry?
No, only in Canada.
So you have to wrap this up. We got time for 2 more questions. I'm struggling between my ED here and the
I got permission from Andrienne.
Bob's going to be here for a little bit. He can meet with some people maybe outside the room just quickly.
Yep.
I don't think he can set up individual meetings, but just real quick questions for him. So 2 more questions.
Hi, Bob. Jennifer Joyce from Athletics. I'm interested in the idea of the professional athlete and people making exorbitant amounts of money. In my sport, it's definitely something that we see happening, and it's extremely frustrating when you see your teammates that are making $500,000 a year and they're blowing the equivalent of a full year AAP on like bar tabs and car rentals and that kind of thing, right? So, and especially in this climate where you mentioned there's like women's ski jumping and you're looking at ways of adding new sports in, like to me this is the easiest way to immediately find funds that may not, like these people probably wouldn't notice if their carding checks stopped coming.
Yep.
But since my first forum in 2009, your position has sort of stayed the same, which is like it's something we need to continue to look into. Has there been progress, or where are we in this?
I guess we're kind of on the back burner right now, but it's something that we've definitely talked about internally at Sport Canada, and it's something that's got as far as the minister's office in terms of an idea.
Yeah.
We did some work on this about 10 years ago, and we had a study done, and the result of the study was putting an income test in place would cost us more to administrate than the benefits that we got out of it. I didn't agree with that conclusion, particularly.
Yeah.
And I certainly would like to put a
we
little bit
not
more
just
progress
request?
in that.
Can we request like income tax returns with your carding application? Like, is that
Well,
something-
that's the biggest issue is how we would police this. You
Yeah.
know, how we would get an idea of what the income was. And
Yeah.
with the new special needs part, when we give those special needs grants away,
Yeah.
we ask for an income tax, the assessment that you get back from Revenue Canada every year.
Right.
So that's how we measure income.
Okay. Well, I think just in terms of like the working relationship, like I don't know if you see it as kind of like a challenge where you'd be taking money away from athletes, but I think from the athlete's perspective, we would be fully supportive of that opportunity to make sure that people that are deserving of the money get it, and the people who don't need it.
Yeah,
you know,
and then
so.
the money would stay in the sport, within the sport.
And actually, to echo that, in our submission, in our joint submission with the COC, CPC Athlete Council in 2010, we did support the idea of an income test. So just so you know that AtheletsCAN has presented that position, and we're still supportive of it.
Yeah.
So.
Hi, Bob. I have a question about the Retirement Assistance Program, and if you could provide an update on the amount of funds dispersed in the last year for that fund, or number of athletes who have been recipients of it.
Yeah, I think the retirement, special needs retirement, is being more utilized now than it has in the past. It's pretty simple, basically. Athletes that have been carded a minimum of 3 years at the senior card level are eligible for up to $5,000 in retirement assistance to help them in their transition from carded athlete into either a continuing education or into the workforce. And again, that's income tested. We put an income test on that. I don't have the numbers on how much we're spending on retirement assistance, but it's certainly probably, I don't know, doubled or tripled in the last 3 or 4 years.
Awesome. Are you around for the afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I know there are a couple of other questions in the crowd that we didn't have time to get to, and so feel free to grab Bob while he's still here, and certainly it's a great opportunity to chat with him. Bob, thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
And we're not going to let you get out of here